Soldier Boy is finally on the board, and it looks like he can take away people's powers. That's a pretty big reveal. I think bigger than Soldier Boy himself. I'm surprised how this show is using this character. Jensen Ackles was used so heavily to promote the show, yet he didn't show up in the first 3 episodes, which made up the debut of the show on June 3rd. And, he just shows up very briefly at the end of this episode. And I can't wait till we wrap season 3, because I've seen it all, but I'm excited for you to catch up so we can really discuss our thoughts on how Soldier Boy was utilized and Jensen Ackles in this season, because I think it was a bit of a wasted opportunity. I think they want him to be an answer to Homelander, and it's surprising because Jensen Ackles, I think he's a good actor, and many of you who are extremely familiar with his work think he's a fantastic actor, and you would think he'd definitely be able to deliver something on par with Anthony Starr's performance. Anthony Starr, to be fair, has had a lot more time, but still, I'm surprised. I'm surprised. A lot of people are surprised in episode 4 where the shit really hits the fan for everyone except Homelander, who's making some moves because he wants to free himself of the control he was complaining about in episodes 1 through 3. And Butcher's feeling it too. That's what drives Butcher to take the V-24. That's why that sit down between the two men in episode 1 is so important. By the way, in the comments of my breakdown for episodes 1 through 3, I saw some of you say or insist that scene didn't happen, that Butcher imagined it, just like he imagined Homelander talking to him through the television. He did imagine the second thing, but the first thing actually happened. Not only because Amazon told us in the press not to reveal the pact that Butcher and Homelander make in episode 1, because it's real, but also I can tell you later on in the season, no spoilers, but Homelander directly references that conversation. So it's not even open for interpretation. He and Butcher definitely sat down and talked. And, a lot's come out of that decision, that discussion that they had together. All right, so what's, Homelander's moving a little faster than Butcher, but don't worry, they'll catch up to each other. So what does Homelander do? Well, he does what people have done in real life throughout history, and that's he creates an us versus them narrative on 2 fronts. He creates it with his fans, blaming mysterious forces pulling the strings from everywhere. You hear that in the news a lot, even today. But then he also does an us versus them narrative between supes and humans. And you'll notice it's starting here, and it's going to happen throughout the season, so pay attention to it. But you'll see a very important choice made as to how Starlight is addressed by other people and herself. Is she Starlight or is she Annie? Her super name or her human name? So pay attention to that as well. I think that's very interesting. That's very subtle and something you'd have to look for to really get. But a war is brewing thanks to Homelander, and I think you're seeing a rush from some people to make sure they get over to the soup side, which they're assuming is going to win, before that war starts. And 2 people are directly affected by this pressure, Hughie and Victoria Neuman. Let's start with Vicky. So Stan Edgar, feeling Homelander is getting a bit too aggressive because he calls out, the only specific entity that Homelander calls out on the news is Vought. He says, some people at Vought are trying to control me and therefore you. And so Stan Edgar is like, let's get Homelander back in line. And his big idea is to have Victoria Neuman announce an FCC fine against Homelander for some salty language on his birthday special. How does he think that that's going to be comparable to what Homelander's doing on television? And wouldn't Vought pay that fine anyway? I don't even think Homelander uses money or needs to. I mean, he's certainly on the Vought expense account, but I think, nobody's going to demand that Homelander pay for anything. So I thought that was an odd play from Stan Edgar, who's usually so on point. Even in this episode. We'll talk about his scene with Homelander in a moment. But anyway, Homelander is able to get word of what's happening thanks to Ashley. Sometimes Ashley's actually good at her job. And his interactions with Ashley here are interesting, because at first she just knows there's a press conference happening and he's like, well, what's it about? And he, just like Homelander was doing all last 3 episodes, he's really aggressively humiliating people to remind them who's boss. And, to be quite cruel and, break them down. And that trickles down, just like it does in real life, with Ashley using the exact same tactic on that anchor from Vought News. But as you can see from that anchor, and Ashley with the director in the bathroom at the premiere from episode 1, Some people also enjoy being humiliated. It brings them pleasure. By the way, I forgot to mention it, but I thought it was funny that not only were they referencing the Snyder Cut with the Dawn of the Seven movie, but in their sexy talk in the bathroom stall, Ashley said Tony Gilroy had to come in and reshoot all your stuff, which Tony Gilroy did that to Gareth Edwards on Rogue One. So that was some good inside jokes for Hollywood there. All right, but yes, so Homelander finds out what's going to happen, and he flips the plan around on Stan Edgar, promising Compound V for Victoria Neuman to give to her daughter. And she says, when she gives it to her daughter, she says it's going to make you safe and strong forever. And it's very painful. Her daughter cries out in pain, and Victoria Newman's crying. And I'm like, I can't believe you're not going to tell me what her powers are. It's like a gender reveal party, only you don't find out if it's a boy or a girl. So I was like, man. So that was a little disappointing. But I was like, that's a cute little, drawing that her daughter did. And why isn't Stan Edgar in that drawing? All right. So anyway, I also think it's interesting that just like Starlight and her mother, here you have another mother making the decision for her daughter without her daughter's input really at all. And this daughter was pretty big. I think she's big enough to have a say in this to some degree. But Homelander, when he's leaving Victoria Newman's house, he says, I'm glad you chose your own kind. Again, underscoring that us versus them narrative. Stan Edgar, even though he's dragged away in handcuffs, he somehow is able to negotiate a leave of absence instead. And Homelander's like, those have a way of becoming permanent, Stan. And I liked when Homelander came in and he said, wow, 80/60 blood pressure, Stan. You're not nervous at all. You're not breaking a sweat. That's because I think Stan Edgar really understands Homelander. So, and he gets one good last punch in as a result. So Stan Edgar predicts that Homelander, this is the beginning of the end for him, because now that Homelander's put himself at the top of the food chain, there's no one to cover for Homelander. And, I think Stan Edgar's saying, you don't realize how many times we've saved you at this company. And then he has a great line where Stan Edgar says, you're not worthy of my respect. You are not a god. You are simply bad product. No one can deliver a line like that, like Giancarlo Esposito. I'm going to miss him on this show. But anyway, he walks out, doesn't even look back, again, slowly walks out, doesn't break a sweat, and Homelander, sure enough, does not kill him. I believe because Homelander, he does have that desire to be, for approval. Stan Edgar says, you want me to say you're doing a good job like your dad? But also, I think Homelander, like many villains, wants Stan to see him succeed because Stan says that he can't. So I don't know how safe Stan Edgar would be maybe in the future if Homelander were to succeed. Again, no spoilers. But I think for now, Homelander wants to prove himself to his dad, to his dad. By the way, Butcher is becoming a Stan Edgar himself, telling Kamiko that she is his weapon to use as he sees fit. And Mother's Milk, MM, tells Butcher he's going too far. And Butcher talks himself out of it. He says, hey, MM, I brought you onto the team as my number 2 to be a counter to me. And if I know I need a counter, doesn't that mean that I'm not that off the rails after all? And I'm like, no, it means you've given yourself a license to do whatever you want because you feel I'm going to fix it. So, and I think that's intentional commentary. Really, the show can be pretty fascinating if you look close enough. All right, so anyway, but this is not enough for Kamiko and Frenchie. They're tired of being used by everyone. They say, the cult that gave her, Kamiko and her brother Compound V, Little Nina, Butcher, they're all the same. And Kamiko feels she's becoming a monster. I mean, I think it has a big effect on her. She looked great in that dress, by the way. But I think it has a really strong effect on her that there's this guy, this horrific guy who's doing these horrible things to these women, yet they're more scared of her. And I think that has she's like, I'm supposed to be rescuing you. And it was cool. It was a cool scene. Although a very, very inappropriate scene. I can really only show you this one frame. But they shot her point blank when she was getting the evidence that she completed the job for Little Nina. And it really again, as I said, made a very strong impression on her. So Frenchie and Kamiko decide after this job, because they don't want to abandon MM and Hughie, they're out of there. They're going to go off. But they jinxed it. You never talk about what's going to happen after the mission before the mission. You don't do that. All right, so anyway, back to Hughie. Okay, so I said it was 2 people who were affected, Victoria and Hughie. Well, Hughie finds out about Homelight. He's like, when is this airing? And she's like, tonight. And so they feel that she's in even more danger now because Homelander is keeping her close, almost like a hostage. So she's like, this weapon you guys are looking for in Russia better work out. But Homelander enters, and I love that he signed Hughie's cast. Best Homelander. It was so funny. He was so aggressive about it, and he was great. Anthony Starr just does a wonderful job. He owns whatever room he walks into. But Hughie tries to stand up to Homelander. Now, I don't know what he was thinking, but it was important to Hughie. But Starlight steps in to save him again, and she humiliates him. I think, I don't know. Again, I don't know what Hughie felt he was going to do in that scenario, but I think having to be saved by Starlight all the time is just too much for him. And then, of course, when he goes to Russia, they're really having a laugh at his expense on Russian television. He doesn't even speak Russian, but he knows it's not good. And that's why he sneaks Butcher's V-24, giving him teleportation powers. And in true The Boys fashion, he teleports without his clothing. But what that really means is he can only teleport organic matter, which means he can't teleport an object or anything like that. He couldn't teleport a gun, a file. He couldn't do any of that stuff. And the show is so focused on the inappropriate joke that they never do anything with that. That's like X-Men Stories 101. If he can only teleport organic matter, at some point, you're going to need him to teleport something that is not organic. Could you swallow it and would it work? Those are all very interesting questions. All right, so anyway. So yeah, the secret's out. Butcher and Hughie took V-24 and have powers now. Just like that hamster. That hamster boy. Woo! That's funny. I saw it without the VFX because I told you they gave me the screeners at first without really any VFX. And I don't think the scene, improved that much once they put the VFX in. I was like, oh, it's probably going to really sell itself now. And I was, meh. But anyway, the look on MM's face when he sees Butcher walking across that room taking the bullets and using his laser vision, Laz Alonso did an incredible job on that. I mean, he was more devastated than when he saw Soldier Boy again. And of course, you see flashbacks to what happened with his family at the very beginning of the episode. And Soldier Boy's alive! That's right! Butcher is strong enough to rip open the chamber and release him. But him being alive means that there is no weapon to kill Homelander, and that's devastating. But maybe there is a weapon, because Frenchie has a weapon, he has a gun, and Soldier Boy registers that as a threat. And Kamiko takes the hit from this new power set that Soldier Boy has. And then Soldier Boy runs off, and we see that Kamiko isn't healing. Her Wolverine's off. It's funny because Soldier Boy was also doing some Wolverine vibes too in this scene. But anyways, he's like, I'm Wolverine in this show. But so Soldier Boy at least negated her powers, and that's a fascinating development. So he goes off into the night, and Butcher wants to regroup. He's like, okay, there's no weapon. Let's see what we're going to do here. And MM's like, there's no team anymore, Butcher. Hughie's high, off on a cloud out the window, and Kamiko is near death's door. Who knows if she's going to make it? And Frenchie, of course, is devastated. So yeah, the team's looking pretty bad right now. So as for the other team, the 7, we see Maeve training because she feels she can at least stop Homelander for just enough time for maybe Butcher to be able to use that weapon. And Starlight comes to see her about the weapon because, Starlight's freaking out about this whole Homelight thing. And they find out, Starlight finds out that Maeve has been working with the boys. And she's been sober for 4 months. She's taken this really seriously. She's willing to die for this because she still feels a lot of guilt, I think, for many things, but in particular what happened on that plane. And that's great to have something that happened in season 1 carrying through all the way to season 3. They want to get more Supes to join them, and I think it's fascinating that it's the 2 women on the team who are willing to take this risk. But they find a guy, she recruits Supersonic, and she's like, why would you do this? Why would you be willing to risk yourself like this? And he says, because you're the only woman I ever loved. But he's like, no, I'm just teasing you, because she's like, I'm with Hughie. And I'm like, Supersonic, you're not that good an actor. I think he meant it. But that was cool of him not to make it a thing because she's with Hughie now. And he says, no, it's because it's the right thing to do. And I'm like, I think it's a little bit because you still like her. But that was interesting. Poor Supersonic. We'll get to his demise in a moment. But anyway, first off, they have a team meeting with the new members, the Deep back on the team, and of course, Supersonic and the Taco Bowls. And Homelander continually trying to speak Spanish to him. It's very well written. You're like, yikes. And then A-Train, though, takes a moment before the meeting's adjourned saying, I really want to sit down with Blue Hawk because Ashley's not giving him anything. But the Deep's wife, who for some reason is allowed to also sit in on this meeting, she gets the Deep to step in and to look out for Homelander to make himself a valuable asset to Homelander. And he points out that Blue Hawk and Homelander have a lot of the same base, which is obviously not a great thing, but, Homelander's not going to move against somebody who would upset his own fans. To do so would upset his own fans. So A-Train takes it up with the Deep outside the meeting. And this is interesting because, they have to do it very quietly because they're afraid Homelander will overhear them. And I thought that I thought A-Train's description of the Deep, Ashton Kutcher effed a clownfish, was really accurate. I was like, dude, you can't even get upset about that because it's true. And then A-Train's like, the Deep's like, I'm going to let everyone know that you leaked the Nazi stuff on Stormfront. And then A-Train's like, well, I'm going to tell everyone that you fished that plane video out of the ocean for Maeve. So they're kind of at a draw, but Homelander walks in and he sides with the Deep and he picks him up off the floor and they walk away. And so A-Train is just devastated. And Supersonic sees an opening to try and recruit him to what Starlight and Maeve have planned. I'm like, Supersonic, you just join. I don't think you're on the recruiting level on this team just yet. But you gotta respect that he's so into it that he tried. Now, at the press conference, when they're watching from the conference room, the whole Victoria Neuman thing, it's edited very well because A-Train, it seems, is going to join up with them. He's like, yeah, this is too much. But in reality, he bets on Homelander. He feels Homelander's going to win. So at the end of the episode, Homelander, they're playing the cute couple, and he says, let's go for a flight. And it's like so embarrassing for Starlight to have to go through that. And so he picks her up, they fly off, and he reveals on a rooftop nearby that he's ripped Supersonic apart because A-Train told him about what was going on. And he said, if you keep scheming against me, I guess he feels because Starlight's so popular, he needs her for his approval ratings. I guess you wouldn't have a show if Homelander wasn't willing to take some risks. But he says, if you cross me again, Hughie's next. And he makes her say it out loud. Hughie uses Starlight as an excuse for why he's taking V24, and Butcher is using Ryan as an excuse, with Butcher also saying, oh, this isn't power, it's punishment. But I think that's all really an interesting commentary on drug use, because these are all just excuses for these guys doing what they want to do. Other interesting moments, of course, the soda commercial that we saw in the trailers making fun of Kendall Jenner, with the corporate, what corporate awareness is, celebrity awareness. I feel like this would have landed better if they had not revealed it in the trailers. I think it would have been better off revealing one of the shows he was pitching, like A-Train to Africa or something, than giving this bit away, because it went on for so long. I'm like, it's such a long bit, you should let it hit fresh in the show. Then Little Nina's business, because that's how they set up this whole trip to Russia and the intel on where to find Soldier Boy. I think Little Nina obviously is a big problem. She's like the female Butcher, only with sexual harassment added in, and that's really, it's the boys, so it's very graphic and it's very aggressive. And, the fact that Butcher is okay with it is really a problem, because, Little Nina keeps saying, like, Frenchie's her dog, and then Homelander rubs his head like he's in agreement that Frenchie's just their dog that they're sharing. It's pretty bad. But anyway, Butcher's like, hey, here's the debt of Frenchie's friend Sherry, plus an extra $100K for your time. And she's like, well, what about my pain and suffering? And she says she wants Frenchie's friend Sherry. But Butcher cuts a deal for that assassination with Kamiko that we see. Of course, it's never enough with someone like Little Nina. But what I thought was hilarious was that her restaurant has a B health grade. Oh, that's so perfect for that. I think that's great. They could have even gone with a C, but I guess maybe a B is funnier. I think that, but it was very clever. I wonder if that's like the real health grade that restaurant has in real life. All right, so that's episode 4. Again, are you excited that Soldier Boy is finally on the board? Are you excited for that character in this season? And what do you think of all the moves being made? Can Homelander run Vought? Or do you agree with Stan Edgar? Share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.